Cheers and welcome my friends, I'm Horath and this is my tips and tricks video for combat and fleets in Stellaris. I try to compile all my experiences that I made during my Great Old Ones Let's Play into this video so that you can learn from my mistakes and use some of the strategies that I found most useful. If you enjoyed the video, if you found it helpful, then please give it a like, and if you have any questions or comments, then please leave them in the comment section. Thanks. One universal truth about combat and warfare is that preparation is half the battle. And there are quite a few things that you can do in Stellaris before the first shot is fired. And one of these things is making proper use of space stations, space defense stations. As you can see, I got a space station beside my capital planet, and that station has two purposes. It has to defend the planet from any straggling ships. It won't be strong enough to take out a fleet, but it can fend off stragglers and invasion armies until my fleet can arrive. And that is the second purpose, to buy me some time in protecting that spaceport. And these stations, they do cost you maintenance, but they don't they actually don't count towards the naval capacity. So even if you had full naval capacity, you can still build space stations, defense stations, to defend your homeworld. Now you can't just plaster your homeworld with defense stations. If I were to build a military station, then you can see that I cannot build it inside the range of this military station. But there is a defense strategy that might help you nonetheless, and that has to do with the auras that these stations can project. So you can see that I can select a couple of auras over here, and one of these auras is the subspace snare that forcefully redirects incoming hostile fleets to the location of this station. So I actually did this wrong. I shouldn't have put an FTL inhibitor on the station right beside the planet, but what I'm going to do later is I will build another military station as far from this planet as possible. Over here maybe, just outside of this thing really, so that the enemy has to travel as far as possible before they reach my planet. So I'm gonna put that out there, really at the edge of the system, and enemy fleets are gonna be pulled out at the station, have to deal with the station and its defenses and firepower and all that. They are gonna destroy the station eventually, and then they're gonna move towards the planet and have to fight off another station and the spaceport. You can also beef up your spaceports by going for the synchronized defenses module that you can research, and that increases fire rate and weapons damage of this station. It can be worth it. And after they have arrived over here, they have to fight off these two guys. And the idea behind this is to give my fleets more time to react and come to the defense of my home planet and defending this this really important spaceport where I'm building my battleships that shouldn't get destroyed. So that is the idea, and you can do that before any shots are fired. Just think about what your most important planets are. What can you not afford to lose? Obviously, losing your capital is really bad. Losing your important research world is really bad. You could also go ahead and fortify some of your border worlds. I might, for example, fortify Tusonia because it lies right next to the enemy. Just think about what you need to prepare for the enemy attack and what they are likely to do. It might be stating the obvious, but always make sure that you build up to your naval capacity. You will be at a serious disadvantage if you get declared war upon and your fleet isn't big enough. And the AI actually takes into account the size of your fleet if it decides if it should declare war on you or not. And the reason for that is that especially the bigger ships will take a long time to build. You can see that it will take me 384 days to build a battleship. That is over a year. That is over a year that I have to wait for one battleship. And you won't have that time if you get attacked. The enemy will be upon you in a matter of days if they are prepared. So you're really putting yourself at a serious disadvantage if you do not build up to your fleet capacity, your naval capacity. If you can't afford it, build facilities until you can. It is really important that you do that. Speaking of naval capacity, how can you increase your naval capacity? Well, there are two factors that determine the size of the navy that you can sustain. One is population. You can see that we gain 61 naval capacity from the POPs that we have. And from spaceports, we gain 147 from the spaceports that we have throughout our empire. And one of the things that you can do to make sure your naval capacity is maxed is go through your sectors and have a look at planets that do or do not have spaceports. And if you can actually build spaceports in sectors, even though you can't do anything else. Like, I can't move this pop, I cannot build anything because it is part of a sector. But I can put a spaceport on this thing. I have to select the initial defense module, the weapons module of the spaceport. And now we're at 147 from spaceports. If I build this, we get 153. So you get 6 naval capacity for each spaceport that you have, plus 1 more naval capacity for each level of a spaceport. So if I were to upgrade this spaceport to a level 5, then I would gain 1 more naval capacity after this is finished. Upgrading your spaceport also has the additional benefit of making your spaceport stronger. Our level 6 spaceport over here on Relaye actually has plus 5,500 hull points, a lot more armor and double the weapons damage. If we go to a very basic spaceport like Rebecca over here, you see that it only has 1,500 hull points and lesser armor and only 15% weapons damage increase. It is a bit unfortunate that the power symbol stays the same. This is still 413 power. I would like to see this increased to actually show that a level 6 spaceport is way more powerful than level 1 spaceport. But yeah, that is a way to increase your naval capacity. I could also build a spaceport on that planet and get up my naval capacity even further. Now we're at 159, and the higher your base is, the more you will profit from the third way in which you can increase your naval capacity, and that is just by researching space doctrines. You can see that we're gaining 10% from space combat, 10% from reactive formations, and 10% from interstellar warfare. So those are the 3 things that increase your naval capacity. Population, you can do something about it, but it's difficult to increase that in a pinch. Spaceports and the upgrade levels of your spaceports, and tech. So keep an eye on these and check your sectors if there are planets that have not yet gotten their spaceport. If not, build one. An additional thing that you can do before any war breaks out to increase the fighting capacity of your empire is to specialize your spaceports. I'm just gonna assume that you have built spaceports in all your systems to get up your naval capacity. But even if you do that and you do not specialize your spaceports, then you're gonna have a bad time. So, for example, if only your capital spaceport is good to build spaceships, and it gets destroyed, then you're going to have a very bad time if you have to build new ones. So what I would recommend is specializing each of your spaceports for one specific sort of ship. I mean, I currently have the spaceport of my capital specialized towards cruisers and battleships. Both are big ships. If I get a better module, then I'm gonna change the cruiser assembly yards to something more suited. I would like to put the Garanthium Forge on there to increase the ship hull points. Sadly, I don't have any Garanthium right now. But I do have other spaceports that are specialized for other roles. So for example, Makrutosh over here does have a spaceport that has destroyer assembly yards on there. I'm gonna build up this spaceport and specialize it towards being my destroyer building station. We do have Carnegie over here that is being moved towards being a Corvette assembly yard, and in that way you make your empire less vulnerable. If the enemy can take out one of your spaceports, and you can still build ships in a dozen other spaceports that are well suited for building ships, then your defensive capabilities are way higher than if you just have one super spaceport and all crap spaceports in all other systems. Now, when it comes to fleet composition, I would argue that mixed fleets with different damage types and different ships for different roles will win over big mono fleets. It might be tempting to build fleets with only one type of ship, and there might be some use for it. For example, you could make a very fast Corvette hunter fleet just to have sort of a strike force. But generally, I would argue that having a mixed fleet with different types of ships, big battleship to give sort of its aura to the other ships, some cruisers and destroyers to lay on the damage, and some corvettes to maybe draw some fire and evade that fire, and getting close to the enemy is actually the superior way to go over mono fleets. So I would recommend to have just mixed fleets. Don't go too heavy on one of them. Just keep in mind that big ships also take more naval capacity and have different designs for different purposes. I've already shown that in my ship design video, but I do have point defense corvettes, I do have shield stripper corvettes and damage per second corvettes. I do have gunboat destroyers, and I have energy weapon destroyers, and if you combine these things you can make battleships that are basically giant carriers that only have strike craft with them and lots of that. Then you will be able to win over enemies that have mono fleets and are only using one type of damage or one type of ship. One thing that you might not know is that fleets that are already upgrading, that are already in the process of upgrading, will always upgrade to the newest version of a design. So these guys are 61% towards finishing their upgrades. But if I were to redesign one of the classes that they are upgrading to, they will still upgrade to that new design, and you don't have to do that again. So if, for example, I were to change my battleships to I don't know, make them very bomber heavy, and let's just throw something on there like that, and I save that in the same class, then these guys should actually upgrade to that design. At least that is what happened before the Clark patch. Now the Clark patch changes the speed at which ships upgrade considerably. Before the Clark patch it was a really long time until your ships upgraded. That is one of the reasons why I have split this into 4 fleets instead of the upgrading one big fleet, because it just took so long to upgrade one big fleet that it wasn't really worth it. Alright, we're nearing 99%. I just want to demonstrate to you that they upgrade to a certain ship type.
Ships upgraded.
Okay,
Construction complete.
Now let's have a look at one of the Azatoth classes, and you see that they upgrade to the thing that I haphazardly threw together instead of the type that I told them to upgrade to when I started this upgrade. So use this to your advantage. If you get a tech and you have an upgrading fleet already going, then just throw that in and they should actually upgrade to the newest and latest design. Just don't change the name, I think, or it could go wrong. It might be a no-brainer, but I'm still gonna say it. Always use Admirals when you're fighting enemies. They can actually make a pretty big difference. Our Admiral over here, York Sothoth, increases the fire rate of our ships by 10%, which is a noticeable difference, and also has a monthly hull regeneration, which is very, very useful for having fleets out for a long time without being able to repair in a spaceport or something. These guys just repair themselves, which is invaluable. And I would recommend recruiting an admiral as soon in your game as you can, especially if you're a long-lived race, because then the admiral can gain experience from your very first battles. You can see that additionally to the 10% fire rate he's already giving, he's increasing fire rate by another 20% and reducing ship upkeep. I guess the fire rate goes up in 5% increments and the ship upkeep in 4% increments. But it is actually really, really useful to have admirals and experienced admirals, and they will always change into the biggest ship of a fleet. So try to have at least one battleship in a fleet to protect your admiral. Now, as you might know, fleets move at the speed of its slowest ship. And that can actually be a problem if you want to catch an enemy fleet. So we do have a 6,000 strength fleet of our enemy over here. And these are warp guys, so there is a real chance that they are trying to get out of here. You can see that they're entering an orbit. And this fleet would not be able to catch them because we have a lot of battleships and stuff. But I can create a new fleet and pull out all my Corvettes, which is a bit tedious because it's always gonna change down there. I wish these guys would sort after the ship class and not after, I guess, names or something. We're just gonna make a Corvette fleet that can live. Alright then, okay. So this Nautilus squadron with 11 ships and 500 strength should be way faster than the other guys. I might have a speed guy even. Yes, I do have a speed guy, so... Oh yeah, okay, so I would have to throw out another leader. Oh well, we're not going to do that, but I'm going to send this squadron after this army, and I'm going to send the other fleet after them as well, but they're going to be way slower, so... I'm going to let them do that. Come on, guys. Move over there and do it fast. You can see that the Corvettes are already charging ahead over here. And it might be possible to catch that fleet before they get out. If they still want to get out, then they have to emergency FTL out of the system, and that is going to hurt them. That's going to reduce their hull points. So now we have engaged that fleet, and they won't be able to destroy our Corvette fleet until the big fleets arrive with the battleships and can bring the pain to that fleet over there. We are low on attack at the moment, but that has changed rapidly now. And now we should be able to destroy that fleet actually. Oh, they are emergency FTLing out of there. But it's gonna cost them dearly. You can see that they're down to 75%. So you can chase them and you can finish them pretty quickly. Let them do that 3 times more and they are done for. So remember, you take some Corvettes out of your big fleet to chase down enemies. Knowledge is power, and that's especially true for war. Knowing what FTL-Tech your neighbors are using and how to fight that specific FTL-Tech is a very useful thing and has lots of advantages. So I found out that these guys are using hyperlanes. You can find out what enemy ships are using just by looking at their design. Over here at ship details, you can have a look at the thing that they're using at the hyperdrive, and you can see that they're using hyperlanes. Now, hyperlane tags can only move along these specific lines, along these hyperlanes, and luckily for me, I gained a rare tech and researched that allowed me to see hyperlanes, even though I am a wormhole FTL using species. And that helped me plan my strategy against these guys. You have to know that FTL hyperlane species can travel very fast between systems, but they have to stay on these hyperlanes. And also they can jump from any point in the system. Warp drive and wormhole tech species have to travel to outside of the gravity well of the system. So they always have to move out of the system before they can jump. Hyperlanes do not have that. So they can jump in and jump out at any point, whenever they please. But knowing that they were using hyperlanes, I knew that my eastern planets were safe because we had a real choke point over here, and that is what you want to do when you're fighting against hyperlane guys. Funnel them into some sort of choke point where you have built fortresses, defense stations in space, and try to take them out because they are pretty predictable. They don't have a lot of options where they can go to. Now we are a wormhole tech, and that means that we use these stations at the borders of systems to open wormholes and let our ships pass into other systems. And that costs us some warm-up time when we want to travel somewhere, because the station needs time to open a wormhole. And the bigger the fleet that we want to send through a wormhole, the longer the time to open the wormhole. And we also have to travel at the edge of the system. And that is really good for raiding, because once we have opened that wormhole, we can jump to basically any system that we have within range of our wormhole generators. When fighting wormhole tech, just remember that they have to travel to the edge of a system before they can jump out of it, and try to destroy their wormhole station. That severely limits their mobility, and they aren't very well defended if the other civilization hasn't put a military station right beside their wormhole generator. Now the warp tech, warp bubble tech, these guys are very slow traveling between systems. They also have to get out of the gravity well of a system, but they do have a cooldown phase. So if they have arrived in your system, if they have traveled, let's say for Relaye, they would arrive somewhere over here maybe when they're coming from that direction. And then they have to cool down for a bit, let their drives cool down. And during that time, they are pretty vulnerable. So try to attack warp civilizations when they arrive in your systems by ideally predicting where they are going to go, or aggressively driving them to a certain system, trying to catch them during their cooldown phase. There will be a little white circle that indicates that a warp, that fleet of warp ships is going to arrive in that system, so you know exactly at which spot they are going to arrive in your system. Yeah, so that is it. Try to funnel hyperlane civilizations into choke points that you have defended. Try to destroy the stations, the wormhole generation stations of wormhole techs, and try to catch warp using civilizations during their cooldown phase when they just have arrived in a system. I hope that helps you. Now, one last little thing that you might not know and that might help you is that if you build armies on your surface, you actually have to give them some sort of attachment. I mean, you can use them without that attachment, but it isn't really worth it to send them out without it. So after you've built your army, just click here on attachment, which is going to be empty. We're going to unequip it here to show you what I mean. And then you can choose between these two. I think these two are pretty basic. Hunter-killer drone swarms, which increase the damage, and neo-concrete fortifications, which increase army health and reduce the upkeep. But you can get more army attachments, like psionic warriors or different sorts and style of equipments. And I think it also depends a bit on the type of army. You can have mechanized armies by using droids. You can have slave armies. There's a lot of different types of armies, but I first made the mistake of not using the attachments for my armies, and it's pretty useful. It costs some minerals, but it's gonna make your armies stronger. So just remember to give them some attachments after you have built your armies. Hooray! You made it to the end of the video. If you found any of these tips helpful, then please give the video a like so that I can show up in search rankings and help even more people. If you want to know more about Stellaris, you might want to check out the playlist. I got some other tutorial and tips videos for Stellaris that might help you. If you have any questions or comments, then please leave them in the comment section. And I do hope that I see you in one of my Let's Play series. Thanks, bye bye.